We did it, babe. We finally left the States. We really moved to Canada.
You're immigrants. Why don't you go back to where you came from?
But we thought Canada loved immigrants.
That was the old Canada. The new Canada loves Jordan Peterson storming the Capitol and telling people to go back to where they came from. Go on!
Oh, look, honey. Free Canadian health care. Hey! You can't just leave him there.
Not my problem, lady. Hallway at the hospital was full.
I'm fine. It doesn't look like it's going to rain.
Get back in the truck.
But Trump! This is tolerant, progressive Canada!
I will leave you here at the lamp, Helen.
Okay, point one. Everything changes in politics. So, something I've noticed in all the years I've been covering politics in the news is that there are moments when a person or a party's power just feels overwhelming. And it just never lasts. Right now, Donald Trump feels invincible, full of confidence and momentum, but this will change because, as I say, everything changes in politics. In 1964, President Lyndon B. Johnson won a landslide victory. 4 years later, he didn't even seek re-election, things had got so bad. In 1972, Richard Nixon won a landslide. 2 years later, he had resigned.
People have got to know whether or not their president's a crook. Well, I'm not a crook.
Jimmy Carter, George Bush, there are many more examples of presidents losing support. In fact, this is a well-established finding in presidential scholarship. And as this article explains, one factor that accelerates this process is when a president, quote, says or implies he will do more than he can do. Something, of course, we've never seen from Donald Trump.
That is a war that's dying to be settled. I will get it settled before I even become president.
And there's another reason we should expect to see public opinion move away from Donald Trump's agenda, even if the public has just voted for that agenda. This phenomenon is called thermostatic politics, and it describes the way public preferences naturally shift in the opposite direction of government action, a bit like a thermostat reacts to a change in temperature. So when left-of-centre President Barack Obama was in power, public opinion moved in a conservative direction. And when conservative Trump won in 2016, public opinion went leftwards. So it's reasonable to expect support for Trump and his politics to decline. In fact, people forget how Trump's approval ratings really tanked in his first year of office. But this is a wider point than just American presidents. It's about how power is always contested, and how it's easy to be just overwhelmed by the present and forget that everything changes. I mean, even dictators who don't have to worry about voters lose their power. Maybe the best symbol for this point is the ancient idea of the Wheel of Fortune. The goddess fate spins the wheel at random, those at the top fall to the bottom, and those at the bottom move to the top. Nothing lasts forever, and that's especially true in politics. Okay, point two, you break it, you own it. In his first term, Trump had many more limits on his power. In Congress, the Republican Party, and in the people he appointed to his cabinet, he faced opposition, which is much less the case now. This is a disaster. But the silver lining is that it's much harder for Trump and his supporters to blame others when things go wrong. A key idea here is incumbency fatigue, whereby the governing power, the incumbent, is worn down by the political controversies, policy failures, and scandals that are almost inevitably part of being in power. And let's be honest, there's going to be plenty of all of those. The argument against this, of course, is that Trump and his movement will lie, and voters, their brains addled by partisan media, will believe them. But propaganda has limits, and populists like Trump often seem to struggle with voters once they have a record that they have to defend. In Brazil, Bolsonaro won 55% of the vote in 2018, but after mismanaging COVID-19 and the environmental issues, he lost the 2022 election. Another example of this, of course, is Trump, who couldn't win re-election in 2020. More generally, we've seen a trend of voters turning away from incumbents and voting for opposition parties. This was obviously bad news for opponents of Trump in the last election, but now he's in charge, the phenomenon works in their favour. Okay, point three, overreach. In the 2024 election, Trump won all 7 swing states as well as the popular vote, and it was a more emphatic win than many were predicting. But it's worth remembering it wasn't actually a landslide in terms of presidential election history, and the margin of Trump's popular vote victory was smaller than Joe Biden's, Hillary Clinton's, or either of Barack Obama's victories. Also, his majority in the House is narrow, and his Senate majority can't survive the filibuster. What's more, Trump's win was about everyday issues, with resentment at inflation and concern about the economy being a key voter concern. So it's not an overwhelming endorsement. But how does Trump see it?
My life was saved for a reason. I was saved by God to make America great again.
Trump and his movement are going to overreach. A mixture of overconfidence and a seemingly genuine belief in divine mission are going to make them go too far and alienate voters. Already we've had pardons for the January 6th rioters, some of whom attacked police officers in the most horrific ways, tariffs that are likely to drive up prices for consumers, a chaotic freeze on federal grants and loans that then had to be reversed days later, and Elon Musk doing this. MAGA extremists, of course, will love all this, but not every Trump voter is a MAGA extremist. Trump, like all politicians, has a coalition of support made up of core voters and more moderate, less ideological swing voters. And much of this will go down badly with this less extreme group of voters. Even Trump knows his movement can be too extreme. Look how he distanced himself from abortion bans in his campaign. In fact, some Republicans have already joined the criticism of pardons and tariffs. What will make this overreach even worse is that Trump cannot run again in 4 years' time, though I admit, we can't be sure he won't try. But that means for the next 4 years, the others in the MAGA movement will be maneuvering to be Trump's successor. These are perfect conditions for a purity spiral, where members of a political movement compete for leadership by becoming ever more extreme. And this will all be made worse by the echo chamber of conservative media that will push MAGA ever further away from the concerns of ordinary voters. So, expect to see overreach and ordinary voters turned off as a result. Point 4. Succession failure. Talking of leadership contests, let's get to the next point. Trump's successor will not have his charisma. In my video on how the June stories illustrate how power works, I share the idea that power is made up of both raw coercive force, how many soldiers, guns and weapons you have, and legitimacy, the belief others have that your authority is right and justified. In the June stories, the main character rises from refugee to leader of the Fremen. And to do this, he taps different sources of legitimacy, from religious to traditional to ideological, all of which increases his supporters' belief in him. One of the key types of legitimacy he uses, however, is charisma. What socialist OG Max Weber described as the absolute personal devotion and personal confidence in revelation, heroism, or other qualities of individual leadership. Trump has this, some weird mix of celebrity, personality, dark humour and cruelty that fascinates and attracts attention and loyalty in a way that is extraordinary. But that's the point, it's extraordinary. None of the other MAGA types have this. And when Trump-like candidates have tried to run on extreme MAGA ideas, but without his charisma, they failed. And so, while a lot depends on what Democrats do next time, it's reasonable to predict that if any of the current gang of Trump wannabes want to win, they will move to the centre. My prediction is that Trump's politics without Trump's charisma is not a winning formula. Point 5. His ideas won't work. Okay, there's a lot we could say here. Trump says he wants America to be strong and respected abroad, but much of his foreign policy, freezing all American aid for example, is likely to strengthen China and America's adversaries. As we've seen, Trump voters care about the economy, but tariffs are likely to increase prices and hurt growth.
Hey Trump, man.
What's one of your biggest issues?
Probably gonna be inflation, because I sell t-shirts and all that stuff.
Your t-shirts are made in the USA?
No, my blanks, no. See, that's the thing Trump's talking about. If we tax them, hit tariffs, the same item they're making over there will cost the same to make over here.
We pay the tariffs.
Well, the companies pay the tariffs, not us.
China doesn't pay the tariffs. We do when they come in.
No, it doesn't work like that.
But I guess if I had to pick one self-defeating move, I'd pick on the way Trump is breaking the rule of law, which defined basically is the principle that you have to follow the rules regardless of who you are. Some of Trump's actions, like the pardons, I might not like, but they were clearly part of Trump's presidential powers. But many of his other actions are not. Freezing funds that Congress has authorised, firing inspector generals without notice, despite the law saying otherwise, shutting down USAID. It's a long and growing list of illegal actions that even some conservatives have been criticising. The point here is not that these actions are necessarily unpopular with voters, but that they chip away at part of what has made America strong and its businesses successful. In America, you have to follow the rules. Businesses and
I implore you.
Implore away.
Please. Please. You're all going to die down here.